2023 brought with it a bunch of new features to Pokemon Go, but not every single one of them were successful. In this video, I'm going to be talking about 4 of the major releases in Pokemon Go and talk about why they either succeeded or they did not. Hopefully this is going to be extremely constructive, especially if Niantic plans to add more features to Pokemon Go in the future. Alright, so let's get right into it. How's it going, everyone? It's me, it's Jinsula. I hope you're having a good day and welcome to today's Pokemon Go video. Alright, so let's talk about all the new features that came to Pokemon Go in the year 2023. Of course, the year is still not over yet, so there might be some additional features that get added before 2024, but I really think that when it comes to this year, these 4 features were the major highlight. Now, in my opinion, 2 out of the 4 of these new features were actually successful, while the other 2 just completely crashed and burned. And I really do think that if Niantic wants to make Pokemon Go a better game, they need to take into account a couple of factors that make the game actually successful. So let's talk about the first feature, which I actually think was a major success, and that is Pokéstop Showcases. Now, Pokéstop Showcases is something that I see as a major positive for Pokemon Go. I really like the design of Pokéstop Showcases, especially in the fact that it is very simple. It's basically a contest that you can have with other players with your own Pokemon, and I really like the idea of them doing more content like this. Now, the reason why I really like Pokéstop Showcases is because it reinforces the gameplay loop of catching and collecting, which is a very core part of Pokemon Go that I want them to emphasize a lot more. It has nothing to do with the Go Battle League, and it has nothing to do with raid battles. It's basically all about showing off your Pokemon, and I really like the fact that Niantic has something like this in the game, because we do need more mechanics like this in order for Pokemon Go to succeed in the future. So how is it reinforcing this gameplay loop? Well, there is XXL Pokemon that you can collect now in Pokemon Go, and this mechanic brings a lot of value to those Pokemon. It's just another way for you to feel excited about catching certain Pokemon, and I really feel like this is the part of Pokemon Go that is the most fun. Some people will say that the Go Battle League is fun or raid battles, but in my opinion, it's all about the collecting aspect of it. And Pokéstop Showcases will essentially reward you for catching a whole bunch of Pokemon. Seriously, if you can win yourself some Pokéstop Showcases, you can get star pieces, a whole bunch of Stardust, as well as other premium items like incense and lucky eggs and incubators. It's a really great way for rewarding players for playing their game, and I really feel like this is something that Niantic needs to do a lot more of moving forward. Now, the other feature that was released this year that I thought was mildly successful is, of course, Shadow Raids. This is a form of raiding that I really do enjoy every time I'm able to do it, and the reason for that is because for the longest time, I've been wanting some additional challenges with raids with better rewards, and I really do believe Shadow Raids fulfills that. It's a very difficult form of gameplay, so people who are hardcore players and even some novice players who want to get ahead are able to do some challenging gameplay for some better rewards, and those better rewards are, of course, some super rare Shadow Pokemon. And the other nice thing about Shadow Raids is that it added a bunch of new gameplay mechanics to raiding that I really feel like makes it very dynamic and actually interesting. And of course, these new mechanics also makes other forms of gameplay in Pokemon Go a lot more relevant, specifically around Team Go Rocket battles. Like, it's very important that you keep up with your grunt battles and team leader battles because you get those shadow shards that you need to use in order to make the Shadow Raid a lot easier. There's just a lot of cool mechanics within Shadow Raids, and I really feel like this is something that Niantic needs to fine-tune to make it a lot better moving forward. There's a lot of really neat things with Shadow Raids, and I really feel like Niantic could do a lot with them, and I really hope they continue to push Shadow Raids moving forward. But of course, Shadow Raids are not perfect. There's a lot of design decisions that Niantic made regarding Shadow Raids that I absolutely do not agree with, and I really feel like Niantic needs to take a second look at how players are doing Shadow Raids and fine-tune it so that it actually plays out better. First and foremost, I do not like the fact that Shadow Raids are in-person only. Considering that they are extremely difficult and sometimes the Pokemon are not even worth it, I really do feel like it's going to benefit this mechanic a lot more if they allow people to remote in. Even though 2023 was the year of additional new features, it was also the year that Niantic went to war against their own mechanic, which is of course remote raiding. And I really feel like because they've been so stingy with remote raids, it's made a lot of aspects of Pokemon Go completely unplayable. And Shadow Raids is definitely one of those areas where this is true. For example, Shadow Legendary Raids are only available on the weekends, and they require a ton of people in order to defeat. And of course, a lot of people who live in rural areas, or even people who live in urban areas, they have trouble getting numbers to defeat these Pokemon, and I really feel like having them be in-person raids is the big problem. If Niantic were to allow players to remote in and help out their friends for these really difficult raids, I really feel like a lot more players would engage with them. Alright, so those are two new additional features that we got this year that I believe are successful. But now let's talk about two features that were released that I feel like were complete failures. The first of these is, of course, going to be routes. I've talked ad nauseum on my YouTube channel about why routes failed, but real quick, let me just say that I do think there was a lot of potential with this mechanic. And I really feel like if Niantic had implemented routes a lot better, it would be one of the core mechanics of Pokemon Go right now. They could have done a lot of things with routes to make them extremely rewarding as well as engaging, but instead of doing that, they made it as kind of like a tech demo. And even in that regard, it's not fully smoothed out. There was a lot of problems with the release of routes, especially when it came to creating routes, and I really feel like because Niantic completely dropped the ball in this area, routes was basically dead in the water once it was released. I think a lot of players initially wanted to try out routes when it was first released, but there were no routes available at the time this feature was released, and that is a huge problem because I really feel like this is something Niantic could have prevented if they had a much better beta testing period. But instead of doing that, I really feel like they rushed the release of this feature and it ended up hurting it in the long run. I mean, there's a lot of improvements that they could do to routes that actually gets players excited about it. Ultimately, what it comes down to is rewards and what Pokemon you can get while you're on routes. I do like the idea of them having some exclusive Pokemon that will only spawn when you're on a route. And I really also like the idea of them awarding you with super rare and super powerful Pokemon, like how the Daily Adventure Incense can get you the Galarian Legendary Birds. One of the Pokemon that they tied to the release of routes was of course Zygarde, and currently the only way to get Zygarde cells is of course by doing routes. But I think it would have been beneficial for routes if they also included Zygarde spawns into routes that you could occasionally get. Much like how when you use the Daily Adventure Incense you can get the Galarian Legendary Birds, I like the idea of you having a super rare chance of encountering a Zygarde, and maybe it could have a super low catch rate just like the Galarian Legendary Birds. I really don't understand why they wouldn't do something like this, considering that Zygarde is currently one of the most powerful Pokemon that you can get, and of course collecting Zygarde cells is tied to routes already, so why not have Zygarde spawns attached to it as well? And I get it, Niantic doesn't want to just hand out legendaries, but I really like the way they handled the Galarian Legendary Birds, and I thought it was a big missed opportunity that they did not do the same for routes and Zygarde. So yeah, this is one of those features that I thought had a ton of potential, but Niantic did not meet any of it. And it's a real shame because I do think routes was something that could have been really cool, but unfortunately it's one of the most forgotten features that they've released in the last couple of years. And then finally, the fourth feature that I want to talk about is going to be Party Play. This is something that I think a lot of Pokemon Go players did not realize they wanted, but unfortunately because of how Niantic implemented it, not a lot of players actually care that it was released. And that's a real shame because Party Play did have a lot of potential, just like with routes. But because Niantic did not implement a lot of good rewards with it, or they did not have some interesting mechanics with it, it ended up becoming another feature that was dead in the water. And I get it, it's been pretty recent since Party Play was released into Pokemon Go, so the jury may not necessarily be out yet on whether or not it is a successful feature. But in my opinion, I really feel like the hype around Party Play was all on the first day it was released, and afterwards, people did not care about it at all. And yeah, I totally recognize that there are players out there who do engage in Party Play, especially when it comes to the Wednesday raid hours. But aside from raiding, I really do not see the point of doing any kind of Party Play. There's a lot of players out there who are more comfortable playing Pokemon Go by themselves. And there's also a lot of players who can't even engage in Party Play because they live in a rural area or a low population area. So I really feel like because of that, Niantic had a lot of things that they should have done with Party Play before releasing it, but instead we got pretty much a lackluster release of what could have been a really cool feature. And it's a real shame because party play has a lot of positive implications for Pokemon Go. Considering that a core value of Pokemon Go is the community aspect of it, having a feature like party play should have been a blockbuster. But as of right now, because of how Niantic has structured it and because the rewards are so abysmal for doing any kind of party play, a lot of players just simply do not care for it. It really just comes down to missed potential. Like, if Niantic had cooked some of these features in the oven just a little bit more, I do think they would have been successful. But right now, they need to redo the reward structures for some of these features, and they also need to make it a much better experience for people who do not live in high population areas. So yeah, overall, this was a very interesting year of Pokemon Go. There were a couple of features that I actually still enjoy, and there's a couple of changes to Pokemon Go that I think definitely benefited the game as well as their players. But overall, I feel like there was just so many missteps that a lot of those positives often get overlooked. And it's a real shame because Pokemon Go could have had one of the best years in its entire lifetime, but because of some of the decisions that Niantic has made recently, it's probably going to be looked at as one of the worst years of Pokemon Go. But in any case, that's going to be it for this video. Now, I would love to know your thoughts regarding these 4 features down below. What do you think Niantic could do to make new features a lot better in the future? Definitely share those thoughts and let's have a great discussion. And thank you so much for making it to this point in the video. If you found it to be helpful, make sure you hit that thumbs up button and subscribe if it's your first time here. And don't forget that little bell so you can stay up to date on whenever I upload videos. And I want to give a quick shout out to all my patrons on Patreon. You make this channel content possible. If you want to support my channel in any way, big or small, then make sure you go and check out the links in the description below. For all my patrons, they get a permanent spot on my in-game friends list. So if you want to interact with me in some way within Pokemon Go, like with remote raids or the friendship system, then make sure you go and check out my Patreon. Also, if you want to support my channel in a big way that doesn't require you to spend money, you could do so by following me on social media. My handle is @Jinsula, and I'm on the following platforms. Alright, and with that said, that's going to be it. I'm Jinsula. Be safe, have fun, love yourself, and I'll catch you all later.